virtual reality is truly sweeping the world. It is the stuff out of fantasy and sci-fi movies come to life. Though it has gone through many changes in the past few decades, it has grown to an astonishing size. Many can trace virtual reality back to the very first use of 3D movies in theaters all around the world. However, now we have devices like the Oculus Rift that help us fully immerse ourselves in any virtual land we decide to program. Although the use of virtual reality is primarily prevalent in the video game industry, scientists have begun to discover other ways to implement it. Many different industries have been using virtual reality softwares to improve their work environment. Engineers use it to help get a better picture of their creations. Interior designers use it to decorate homes or establishments. And of course, video game companies use it to fully immerse their consumers in the worlds they have created. However, as an aspiring psychologist, I am very interested in the ways virtual reality is impacting the field of psychology, particularly in psychotherapy. Using meditation as a form of virtual reality treatment is slightly less tested upon, and maybe less conventional right now. But I believe it can be very useful and much simpler to use. More programs should be developed to help meditation. Meditation is a very common method of psychological relaxation, and is used to return one's consciousness to a state of psychological well-being. It is proven that persistent meditation can improve one's mental health greatly over time. Experienced meditators may be able to meditate on their own with little or no guidance. However, many meditators, myself included, prefer to listen to a calming voice guide us through the meditation process. The voice is usually accompanied by soothing natural sounds or calming music. It is even common to have a video playing, which depicts a calming atmosphere or a beautiful location on the earth. However, many people choose to keep their eyes closed whilst meditating. Now what if we were to fully submerge a meditator into the most calming environment possible? What if we could place them next to a waterfall or a babbling brook, on a beach or on top of the mountain? Even more unrealistically attainable places like the bottom of the ocean or floating in the sky or space are possible with the use of virtual reality programs. Therapists have begun to treat patients with depression or anxiety through the use of virtual reality-based meditations. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a serious mental condition that affects many individuals throughout the world. This condition usually arises after a person is exposed to an extremely traumatic life event. Example can include the death of a loved one, near-death experiences, exposure to war or violence, or etc. Current treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, includes traditional therapy sessions with a counselor. In these sessions, the counselor will talk to the patient about the event and encourage the patients to empty their mind. Other forms of treatment are similar to that of exposure therapy, when and if possible. However, this can be a difficult and long process and can really only apply to experiences relating to the event. Like a near-death experience on the road of a war zone. These can be dangerous scenarios to replicate for both the patient and the therapist, and thus, this is where virtual reality treatment really comes into play. Studies have been done on patients with PTSD that arose from war experience. Programs of a battlefield were designed specifically to help these patients. In the programs, patients are guided through a war zone, sometimes walking, sometimes riding vehicles. Familiar sounds of a war zone like gunshots, ammunition, and orders being yelled can be heard. It is believed that re-exposure to these events will help the patients stop associating their current safe lives with the previously life-threatening events. They are able to take off the virtual reality goggles and feel safe immediately after feeling like their life is in danger. This gentleman right here told reporters that after all the experiences he has undergone and out of all the different forms of treatment he's had to go through after developing PTSD, virtual reality therapy has helped him the most. Another implementation of virtual reality on psychological therapy is through the use of cognitive-based therapy and exposure therapy. To give some background, cognitive-based therapy, or CBT, is often used in the treatment of generalized fears. More specifically, exposure therapy is a type of CBT that is used in the treatment of extinction of specific phobias. For example, let's say a person is afraid of taking the elevator. This is a common fear with a potentially logical origin. Maybe the person has been trapped in an elevator before, or maybe they've had an unfortunate time on Disney's Tower of Terror. Yeah. Nonetheless, CBT would help the person by creating the elevator experience for the patient very slowly. It would take place throughout a multitude of sessions. So, maybe in the beginning, the therapist would take the patient to an elevator. Then, once they are okay with that, they may have the patient push the call button and watch it open. Eventually, the therapist would get the patient to stand inside the elevator and finally ride it. This would all take place over a stretched out period of time. This is known as exposure therapy. However, exposure therapy is also used with specific phobias. So take the classic case of the woman who's afraid of feathers. The same process would be implemented for her, showing her pictures of feathers, having a feather in the room, holding it closer and closer to her, and having it touch, and eventually she would hold it. Now, virtual reality can be a critical step in helping patients extinguish their fears of phobias for good. What if the person who is afraid of elevators could first experience an elevator ride through virtual reality, like this? All of these steps could start off programmed on a simulation of the event rather than in person. Then, once the patient is no longer afraid of the simulation, the therapist could then transition the treatment into the real world. The same goes for the woman who's afraid of feathers. The woman could grow accustomed to a virtual feather before starting with a real one. This approach is already being used today, in fact. Believe it or not, one of the most successful cures for fear of public speaking is through the exposure through virtual reality. And one of the most successful tools for practice are available today is speaking to a virtual audience. Many credible sources have done their research on this matter. According to researchers Thomas D. Parsons and Albert A. Rizzo, the results of the meta-analysis revealed that virtual reality exposure therapy had statistically large effects on all affective domains, as well as all anxiety and phobia groupings evaluated. These effects were of the magnitude described in the literature as large. Thus, virtual reality exposure therapy appears effective from a clinical psychology standpoint. Also, according to TechCrunch.com, virtual reality, or VR, has been used for decades as a tool for therapists to administer virtual reality exposure therapy in a safe and controlled manner. However, due to cost and technology limitations, it has not been widely available to date. However, now, with virtual reality products being sold at a more affordable price, the therapy has been showing up more and more in common practice. Finally, one other thing that virtual reality therapy can be of assistance with is pain relief. According to Daniela M. Romano, researchers have also developed VR programs that are intended to distract patients and work as virtual reality pain relief. These treatments can be used to help cure everything from back pain all the way to phantom limb syndrome. So, to sum up all this information, it appears as if the future of therapy could begin implementing virtual reality in common practice. Whether it is being used to meditate and clear minds, to help patients recover from traumatic experiences, or assisting in the treatment of psychological phobias, virtual reality seems to be an incredibly useful resource in development.